Hey everyone! Today I'm going to show you how you can master coloring with Copics. Now, I've searched for this topic online and I only found videos which specialize on certain things, like how do I color manga, how do I color hair, how do I color this or that. But I don't want to do that. I don't want to show you how you can color one specific thing. I want to show you how you can color everything. So I broke this down into tiny small techniques which apply to everything. So let's get started. There are two things you need to keep in mind beforehand. The first one is Copics are alcohol-based fluid markers. They're fluid. They're not like a pencil where the lead will just come off, but Copics will flow on the paper, which already leads us to the second point, the paper itself. The best set of Copics won't bring you anything if you use crappy paper with it. You can use regular printer paper, yes, but it will bring you several disadvantages. For example, the ink will flow everywhere, even where it's not supposed to be. The paper will soak up a lot of ink, which is horrible for the longevity of your markers. And it will just give you crappy results because it does not have any shininess to it. Whereas if you use marker paper, you won't have these problems because marker paper has some sort of wax on the back side. So yes, it matters. Marker paper does have a front page and a back page, and you need to keep in mind which page is what. So it doesn't really matter which marker paper you use. You can just try around and find your favorite brand. This is my favorite marker paper here, and you see this in every single one of my videos. I can just hold it like this because my tripod is in the way. So it's the My Bad marker paper by Sama. And I also have the regular Copic marker pad here. It's this My Bleed Proof marker pad by Copic. But I don't really like this one too much. It's just, I don't know. It's not crappy, definitely not. But it's just not as good as the other one. So I prefer to work with the other one. Yep. So these are the two things which you need to know beforehand. Now you've got your Copics ready and you have your marker paper. And what am I supposed to do then, you ask? Well, the first thing is we'll start with the nibs. You need to find your favorite nib and you have to work on the qualities of that nib. I'm going to zoom you into this square here, and then I'm going to show you what I mean by working with the nib. Every nib has its advantages and disadvantages and range in which you can use it. So if we take the brush tip, for example, it has this great advantage of giving you this variety of just making a teeny tiny dot, which is right here, can't even really see it on camera, to going in like that, which covers a larger space. So you have the whole range from this tiny dot here to this huge surface over there with the brush tip. You also have everything in between, of course. If I just press a bit harder, I get the circle. If I don't put it down horizontally as I did there, I could just put it down a bit like this, then I get a different shape. Or I can even roll it a little bit so that it covers this area. And this is what I mean with working with the nib. You can get so much out of the nib. And I'm going to show you with the other nib too, because every Copic marker comes with two different nibs. Depends on the marker type you have, which nibs you have. But also the chisel tip gives you a huge variety. You can put down this end of the tip, like this front chisel part, focus, which leaves you with something like that. You can just put down a teeny tiny edge of the chisel, which also leaves you with a teeny tiny dot here. You can put down the long edge of the chisel, which gives you this shape. And putting it down like this does not really help so much, but well, theoretically you can also use this. Now this was just pushing the marker down. I didn't even move it. This is just everything I did without moving the marker, except for this one. I rolled it around a little bit there. But that's what I mean. These are the basic shapes you can get with these two nibs. So if you put this edge down, like I'm talking about this short edge up here, this short edge here, if I put this one down onto the paper and I pull it, it will give me this thin line. If I put down the whole chisel tip, the long edge of the chisel, it will give me that line. If I put down the chisel like this, with this part here, it will give me something in between. Now same for the brush tip. Just the brush, it's hard to see it because I'm holding my marker vertically for this line, but well. Gives me this line here. I can press it down completely. Whoops, which will give me that line. And I can also just push it down a little bit, which will give me something in between. So this is the whole range of your nibs. So the next thing I want to address is the ergonomics. I've already indicated that with the teeny tiny things here. Because a common mistake is that people take this marker and just hold it like this, like a regular pencil. And that's what I meant. Copics are not regular pencils. There's no need to hold your Copic like this the entire time. I'm going to switch you over to the right. We're already zoomed in, so that should be fine. So I prepared some really basic shapes here. And I'm going to show you what I mean by ergonomics. So there's a difference if I just use my marker like this, or if I really take the effort to move it around in my hand. You can see this really common mistake here on the right hand side that you make when you just hold your marker like this. It's that you press it down and you can't even see where the color stops. Whoops, I'm outside the frame, sorry. You can't even see where the color stops right here. You can't see it because it's hidden. So you color outside the lines, which could be an annoying mistake on your finished picture. You really need to move your marker around in your hand. This is like a 360 movement. So for this line here, I would actually keep it in my hand like this. But for the other lines, I would move it around. You can either move the marker around, or you can also move your hand around. So I'm going to move my hand around here for this line. Then I'm going to move marker and hand around for that line. And I'm going to twist my hand like this for that line. And then I can just color in the middle. You can see that this one has no coloring mistakes, this square here, whereas this square has this grave coloring mistake here on the right hand side. If you're left-handed, just turn this whole thing around. So if you're left-handed, you can't see anything the marker does on the left side. So you would have this coloring outside the lines on the left side of the square. Same thing for everything. And this is so important, this ergonomics thing. Just adapt to the lines. Just keep the front of the nib where you can see it. This would be my general rule of thumb. And you don't need any effort for coloring with markers. And that's what a lot of people transfer from pencils to markers. They think they need to press hard, because with pencils you always have to press the pencil down, you have to press it down in order to get lead onto the paper. That's not true for Copics. That's just, you can just, I'm not, like, I could hold it up here. This is really great camera angle, but well, I can just hold it up here. I don't have any control on the marker. And it's going to flow. I don't need any pressure because it's a fluid marker. I made some swirly things down here because you don't necessarily need to push down your marker and color a whole area in the same way. You can, the same thing holds true for such swirly motions. The thing is, for such swirly stuff or straight lines, I would really recommend to keep the marker as vertical as possible. Because the more you tilt it, the more you have the ink on the side, which I showed you up here, which you can't even see because it's hidden. I'm coloring myself all the time, but well, it's just a special effect. And just keep it a little bit vertical. You don't need to keep it 100%, like 90-degree angle with some measuring tool. No, just keep it at some kind of vertical angle like this, and then you can just flow. No problem. Whereas if you keep the pen like this, you will get this sort of, what is this even called, calligraphy line? That this side over here is narrow because the nib is narrow if you pull it along like this, whereas this side is pretty thick because you're pushing down the entire marker side. So just keep it a bit vertical, and then you can get this flicking thing, or you can just keep it with the same pressure on the paper, which will leave you with a pretty much straight line. Straight lines with this nib are a bit hard. I would rather use the chisel tip for that. So for these straight lines here, just using the chisel tip, and straight lines are no problem whatsoever. So these are already the two most important things, I would say. Getting the most out of your nib and getting this rotation correctly, this 360 rotation with your hand and the marker, or both, depending on how much you want to twist and turn. You can also twist and turn the paper, that's no problem. So, now I'm just going to explain some really basic coloring techniques down here, and I think I'm going to zoom out for this. On the left hand side, I'm going to use my colorless blender and then use my Copic, and on the right side I'm just going to use my Copic. Now you can clearly see a difference between the two. This is where I use the colorless blender beneath, and this is where I just put the marker down. And where the colorless blender was, you can see that the color is A, lighter, and B, it is blended out a lot. This is a really smooth circle, and it's lighter because the color distributed over the paper. Whereas this is a really this is a really distinguished circle. It has really rough edges, and it's pretty dark because the color stayed in one exact spot. So the same holds true for blending in general. This was just one color I used over here, but this applies to blending a lot of colors as well. So the camera picks up the colors a bit weird. I apologize for that. But here on the left side, you can clearly see that this is a blend, which goes from right here to right there. Whereas on this side, you can clearly see the dark color here. You can see a cut here, then this color, cut, and the light color. The next thing I'm going to show you is layering colors. Although I think most people know that you can layer Copics. These are the different layers of YrO2. This is all the very same color, just with different layers. 1 layer, 2 layers, 3, 4, 5, and I also decided to take up 6 because I felt like it was still possible to go darker than this. And I hope you can see the difference on camera, but in real life you can see a huge difference from step to step. I'm just going to try to zoom you in a little bit more. I once heard a really known YouTubers say that you can layer markers for up to 2 times and over that it won't make a huge difference anymore. I humbly disagree. For me, you can still see a tremendous difference between 2 or 3 and 6. This is just the very same color applied multiple times. And that's it. The only disadvantage you have if you always keep everything nice and wet and blend and blah 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 is that the paper sometimes can't hold this fluid anymore. You can see it here that everything has gotten a bit out of line, and you can also see over here that my circles tend to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. That's just because the marker spreads more on the page because there is already marker fluid and you put more and more and more fluid on there. So you sometimes have this difficulty that everything is a bit too much for the paper. But if you have good paper, you will have this problem less and less. And at some point you tend to get where the limit is for your paper. So the last thing, the very, very last thing for today is coloring large and small areas. I've already talked about this a little bit in the first step with how to master your nib, but I wanted to show you that it's absolutely possible to color these 2 areas with Copics. So for this big area, I tend to take the chisel tip because you can color larger areas a lot better with the chisel tip, because first of all it has a larger surface area, and second of all it is a lot more sturdy. So the chisel tip pushes the ink into the paper a lot better than the brush tip does, and now you can see that this time I'm really pressing down and actually using some pressure on my marker, and I'm really pushing the fluid into the paper. And now by really pushing this onto my paper, I get a really, really nice result. I'm not really focusing on coloring within the lines right here. This is just to show you that you can color big areas with Copics without a problem. Because a lot of people say you can't, and everything gets blotchy and ugly and all that stuff. You can see that this is an even area. There are no splotches, blotches, there's no unevenness, there's nothing in there. It's just plain pure color, same color. As I said, I haven't really focused too much on staying within the lines. I just wanted to show you that it's possible to color large areas as well as small areas. So just 90-degree angle, tap, done. Now this is really visible on screen, yeah. Not. But I showed you up here how small you can get. So you can just let I can even make such small dots that the camera can't even pick them up. Yeah. So there is no too small for Copics. There really is no too small, so I'm getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger here now. Now there are some techniques which are more helpful for certain things, like I was talking about. There are some tutorials on YouTube how to color hair. Now this motion here is a lot more helpful for coloring hair. This thing here is helpful to color a large area, for example background or something like this. This is good for blending stuff into white or into the color of your paper. Blending is good for everything basically, and this is more or less for precision. So that's everything there is to the world of Copics. This is basically all you need to know. There's no special secret technique that you need to use for certain things. This is everything you need to know. In my opinion, if you want to add something or if you think some other thing is important as well, please let me know down there in the comments. And I'll see you next week. Bye!